Sword Art Online Fatal Bullet. What an up and down journey this has been. I extensively talked about the great gameplay but under-delivered story in my ultimate review of the base game. I extensively talked about my impressions of DLC 1 Ambush of the Imposters and DLC 2 Betrayal of Comrades. Back then, I always said, wait for all DLCs to be out because the episodic formula is just not cutting it, and well, DLC 3 more or less proved me right. Hey everyone, welcome to my channel, it's me Gamerturk, and today I'll talk about DLC 3 featuring Alice and Eugeo, as well as a future Alicization game tease with Subtilizer as the secret ending, Collapse of Balance, as well as how the entire DLC package fares in general. I'll also add Amazon affiliate links in the description for Fatal Bullet and the Season Pass, so if you wanna get the game or the DLC, you can do so through them and support my channel at the same time with no additional cost. But I do recommend watching the impressions and the review first before you jump the gun. Before I begin, a huge shout out to my patrons Tiffany, Ken Leshred and Bold Ulysses who have supported me throughout this summer despite my wonky upload schedule due to personal matters. I'm heading back to Austria in 2 weeks, so things are about to return to normal speed shortly, and of course Sword Art Online Alicization anime will bring the Alicization explained videos weekly to your doors. If you want to join those who are supporting my channel, Patreon link is in the description down below, but without further ado, Fatal Bullet DLC 3 Collapse of Balance is the final paid DLC for the game. It wraps up the story of Arphys's copies as we defeat Lievre in her final form. We don't really defeat her, we just defeat her tank and she goes haywire, but nevertheless, this brings the DLC story to an end. There will be more free updates in the future to add more co-op dungeons, PvP characters, etc. But from everything we could gather so far with SAO Wiki as well, it doesn't seem like there is going to be more story content, just gonna be little gameplay additions. Let's talk about the DLC first as usual, and then I'll talk about the story as a whole. DLC 3 offers a whole lot more when compared to DLC 1 and 2. I assumed it was gonna be the biggest DLC of the three, due to how many loose ends we had in the game. Well, I was correct about the size of the DLC, but I wasn't correct about its contents. We get the usual one dungeon, much like the previous ones, Lost Gate. While again it's a single dungeon, even the dungeon itself is much bigger than the previous ones. The difficulty is once again significantly higher though, so if you weren't playing to level up and grind again, you will have a hard time and may even get to a point where you just drop the DLC entirely because of frustration. There are just too many questionable difficulty choices involved, mainly the dirty scissor type bosses sprinkled around literally everywhere in this dungeon, and if you don't have the firepower to stagger them, tough luck because they will surely summon their aiding small claw doggos and shred you into pieces together. It also doesn't help that the story dungeon in DLC 3 limits your character choices significantly. Only Gameverse original cast along with Alice and Eugeo are available to pick, which makes things a whole lot harder for casual players since you can't go in with a healer combo of 3 as I usually used to do back in DLC 2 for that healing spam. While Alice and Eugeo both are amazing additions to your team, they are really powerful in general, but when you're under level, the amazing additions, who can't heal you by the way, become essentially worthless. So one last warning, if you don't like grinding, this is where you drop the game and watch playthroughs instead, which coincidentally I have here on my channel. However, if you're a veteran player who already does all the necessary grinding, the dungeon is outright amazing, especially the new boss, the Behemoth tank. And this brings us to the second main addition to the game, the defensive battle mode. This mode is more of a personal thing. If you enjoy being pressured by the impending failure, This mode is now your go-to mode. As a tank is assaulting SPC Glocken walls, you need to stop it before it reaches the city. And you can also summon ally mechs to aid you, which I recommend you always go for the tier 3 golems. They do immense amounts of damage to the tank and also constantly stagger and stun it as well, so you can keep critting it with your sniper safely. Overall, I feel like the DLC does indeed deliver on the gameplay aspect as usual, with a new boss formula for the game, much like the previous ones. Though, the entire story is mostly an ad campaign for the next game. The story is about stopping Lievre, much like the first episode was about stopping Alpha Itsuki and Alpha Kureha, and second episode was about stopping Alpha copies of Kirito and Asuna. You have a very simple directive because your enemy is about to do something evil. Sure, a story doesn't need to be grand or anything, but at the very least it could tie up some loose ends, but in the end it just didn't. Instead, it was an elongated advertisement for a possible Alicization game that's gonna come eventually, with the secret ending revealing that an Alicization character, Subtilizer, was Lievre's master. He talks about Alice and Wonderland, which may get you confused, but it's a clear reference to Alicization. And once you watch the first episode of Alicization anime in October, the reference will be very clear for you. If you wanna know more about Alicization without any spoilers, I do recommend my videos on the upcoming Season 3 by clicking the icon on the upper right corner. But how about Itsuki and his closure? Nothing to be seen here. But in the finale of the vanilla game, why did Itsuki say that he thought Zeliska was a cop, and why was Zeliska passive-aggressive towards Itsuki? Surely something happened between them, and I hoped this DLC would answer some of those questions, but alas, it just didn't. And since I'm already talking about the big picture stuff, may as well go full on. $25 for the season pass or $10 for each separate DLC feels too much, no matter how you look at it. Keep in mind that you already got a bunch of improvements to the game as free updates already, and aside from the lackluster story experience, 4 new guns each DLC and the new 1 dungeon and boss in each DLC, there's nothing much here. While I do think the season pass is still a better deal than the laughable DLC for Axel World vs Sword Art Online that just had a bunch of dialogue prompts after making you go through the infinite dungeon multiple times, Fatal Bullet does offer somewhat of a proper story and actual new content, but how good that said content is seriously up for debate. And for a DLC package that is, supposedly taking place right before the Flügel questline, the characters feel like not themselves. At this point in time, Kureha should have already started being passive-aggressive towards you, and Itsuki should have been even creepier. The only person who I saw being themselves was the protagonist. Huh? You get it? Because we have 0 personality. And Zeliska, who was actively working to solve the mystery back at Zaskar, pushing her out of the game for 2/3 of the DLC. None of the other characters were even relevant, even Kirito and Asuna, that made me wonder why they're even speaking to us in certain instances in the first place, just for the sake of exposition. All the added characters, Alice, Eugeo, Dain, Yamikaze, Musketeer X, Clarence, Shirley, had absolutely no role at all in these DLCs. Heck, the only reason Alice and Eugeo are available for the party in DLC3 is because Kirito didn't want to bother caring for them, literally, and thrown them at us. I don't mind, but Kirito, don't you think 2 outsiders who have no fucking clue what a gun is would be better off with the one person who they trust to explain things properly? The duo were already lost enough back in Eingrand when you called up your status window and messaged them. It was like magic for them. At the very least, they gave each of those characters, even the alternative GGO characters, Len, Fuka, Pito, and M, a couple of lines to give the impression that a huge battle is happening at the end of DLC 3. But all in all, I left the whole DLC package somewhat disappointed. I expected a fulfilling story that answered some questions, and instead I left with more questions, with none of the prior ones being answered. And I want to finish my Fatal Bullet adventures by saying that the groundwork Dimps established with Fatal Bullet is miles ahead of what Akuria did initially with Hollow Fragment. It's an actual, properly working game with action-packed arcade shooter mechanics. While it was sad they botched up storytelling in a colossal manner, I'm excited to see where they might take GGO and the concept of an OCMC in the future, thinking back at games like the first Assassin's Creed, the first Uncharted, and hell, even Hollow Fragment. It's obvious none of those initial entries in a formula are ever great. They always do a lot of refinement after their initial test run before becoming great. And a Fatal Bullet's successor has a potential to be great. But Dimps needs to take things seriously at this point, shake things up, offer a lot of variety instead of using the same textures for literally every dungeon. And Yosuke Futami-san, please, next time ensure a compelling story from start to finish. Not just a compelling ending, which was present in Fatal Bullet. The game works, is passable as an introduction to these characters like Kureha, Zeliska, Itsuki and Basalt Joe. But next time, please do more with these characters, and while we're at it, please ensure the Alicization game is faithful to the main canon at a certain point. Not every character needs to exist right from the get-go. So, I'd like to wrap this up with mentioning that Hollow Realization, yes, we are going back to Hollow Realization again, was the most ambitious of the Gameverse games, and it has been the best experience I had personally in a Sword Art Online game. Beautiful locations, tons of meaningful content, beautiful portrayal of characters and their personalities of course, expansive updates and DLCs. Hollow Realization is a game I can recommend to any Sword Art Online fan or any JRPG fan in general. Futami-san, or if anybody from Bandai Namco ever watches this, I truly hope you can surpass that golden bar you set with Hollow Realization and come up with something even greater. And again, my Alicization videos are available for you guys if you want to learn more about the upcoming Season 3. As I mentioned earlier, Fatal Bullet will get some free updates in the future, and you can follow me on Twitter at Gamerturk95 to get the news once they arrive. Once again, huge thanks to my patrons, Tiffany, who's been supporting the channel for 9 months now, Canla Shred and Bold Ulysses as well. Again, Twitter, Facebook, Patreon, all links in the description, and I'll see you guys next time. Take care.